I know. Okay. Now you may take it away. Thank you, Irene.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. This is the last one of this wonderful session that we've had here. And the talk, of course, is colorful plants with winter interest. Okay, most important when you are planting or buying plants is we need to know your hardiness zone, especially if you want to have plants that have winter interest. And also the hardiness zone determines if a plant is able to overwinter and to come back. I put a square around where we are at. We are zone 6B to 7B, depending on where in New Jersey you live. And that means that we can go down to -5 or -10 maybe, and 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason why that is also important is that if you only can plant in planters in the eastern area of New Jersey, the plants that you plant that you want to come back, like your perennials or whatever shrubs, they need to be hardy to zone 5 or lower. 2 hardiness zones colder than 7 because you want them to come back. Granted, if it's next to your house, you can kind of cheat a little bit, but planting in a planter, you have the wind, the cold wind and whatever. So that's really important. And the reason why you need to know your hardiness zone is because you don't want to have this. I know this is a beautiful house. It's way big, but look at how horrible it looks because they need to put the burlap around their plants so that they won't die over the winter. So what you need to do, obviously, is, well, not so obvious because some people don't like to read. You need to read those tags that come with the plant. Some of them have, as you can see here, the number zone 4 to 7, and others actually have the degrees, -30 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's really, really important to do. Also very important is to observe when and for how long your site gets full sun. All plants need sun, some sun. This is a summary of the amount of what you can call full sun is 6 to 8 or more hours of direct sun, mostly 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. That's usually the time that they tell you to put on that sunscreen, and the afternoon sun is the hotter sun. So if, let's say, the sun doesn't come around there until about 12 and it's sunny the rest of the day, that's fine. Even 2 o'clock, that's fine. If it's shady in the morning and then sunny for the rest of the day. Full shade doesn't mean under your porch dank shade. There needs to be some sunlight, either in the morning or late afternoon or all day dappled sun or shade. Then anything that's in between that is part shade, part sun. People use them interchangeably. I don't think there's really any difference. It's like, anyway. And what you need to do in order to figure out how much sun an area gets, you need to observe. And how can you do that? You use either your smartphone or you use a digital camera, and you go out during May, June, or July, and you take pictures of where that site, where you're going to be planting, whatever plants you're going to be planting, and take them at different times of the day. Doesn't have to be all the same day, doesn't have to be every other day. Do it whenever you can. And then by the end, you look at those pictures, and what's great is they are time stamped. So you'll see that, hey, in the morning, there's really no sun here, but in the afternoon there is, or vice versa. And we all are, being a gardener is being an optimist. And as the little thing down there says, we all think that we have more sun than we do. And we kind of sometimes tend to push our plants because, push the envelope because we want to have those plants in our yard. So when you're buying plants, you look at these tags that come along with the plants. This one here has sun and part shade. When you have more than one, the first one is the preferred one. The second one, that plant will tolerate. It may not have as many blooms. than if it's in full sun, or it may not be as lush, but it can tolerate it. And then part shade, there's a whole bunch of different symbols. Usually they use a cloud to cover it up. And then here for Skinnia, they have the sun that's halfway filled and then totally blocked. Full shade, again, full shade doesn't mean that it never gets the sun, although skimmias can take a good amount of shade. And I'll talk about that plant later. Okay, choosing shrubs, choose shrubs with multi-seasons of interest. When I first started gardening, and for many, many years, I would plant perennials all the time, and I never really thought about shrubs. And then after a while, I noticed that it's very practical to have shrubs because they are easier to take care of. You plant them, you do whatever you need to do, water them, and you really don't have to do much. And they're really a great backbone to your garden, and especially if you have shrubs that have more than one season of interest, hopefully evergreen ones. Plant shrubs with multi-seasons of interest. Evergreen shrubs are wonderful. They fill that requirement. And there are two types of evergreen shrubs. They're either conifers or broadleaf. Conifers are the ones that have needle-like foliage. And not all of them, but most of them are cone-bearing. And as you can see on the slide here, there are many different shapes and sizes of these conifers. Or you can have broadleaf shrubs, which have leaf-like foliage like boxwood, rhododendrons, and others that have a wider leaf. Okay, select shrubs that need no pruning because we do not want any of these cones, domes, spears, boxes, whatever. These pictures down here, this is from one site that is the next town over from me. And I just had to take the front view or side view and another one just to show that once you start pruning, you have no choice but to continue. And really, does this look beautiful to you? And the plants, I don't think really appreciate it. And here is another picture from the internet where once you start pruning, you have to keep pruning. It's like once you start dyeing your hair, you have to continue to dye your hair. As you can see, the pruning, when it's done all the time, these plants don't really look beautiful at all. Look at this. I have no idea what it is. Here too, and this one also. And this one is really a small plant, but to keep it in check, they need to prune it all the time. So what you need to do again is you read the plant labels. You look to see what the mature height is and also the width, which is the spacing. This one here, these Jean's Dilly Dwarf Alberta Spruce, grows only 2 to 3 feet high after 10 years. It only grows 2 to 4 inches per year. So yes, this is a wonderful one to plant if you want to keep something small. And here also it tells you the shape of the plant because as you saw before, these evergreens, they come in various shapes and sizes. So we're going to go with conifers first. These are the needled evergreen shrubs, and they have 4 seasons of interest. And look how colorful they are, and look how different each one of them is. Really beautiful. Now, if you have a smaller yard or you don't want to have a lot of these big shrubs, go for the ones that are dwarf and that don't need pruning. That's really very important. And you also have to remember that because something is called a dwarf doesn't necessarily mean that it's a dwarf. It will keep growing, and after 10 or 15 years, it may be a lot bigger than what you started with. So you need to look at the mature height and width of the plant. Here are my symbols key. Why do I have this? Because I only have an hour to speak, and everyone that's watching this has a different need for their garden. We've discussed the various sun requirements. On each of the slides of the plants, I will always have the mature height and spread of the plant, so you'll know if that will go where you want it to go. Always the hardiness zone. Bloom time is also important, especially if, let's say, you go away during July. Don't buy plants that only bloom in July, or most of their bloom time is in July. Buy plants that will bloom all the time that you are home. And some of you are interested in pollinator gardens, so you will see the symbol for, this is for butterflies and bees, and some plants actually the hummingbirds love, and I'll show that. And birds love berries and seeds, and also some of the shrubs they use as a shelter. This symbol here is if there are berries or colorful foliage or something really interesting about that plant that's out of the ordinary. Cut flowers. Some of you love cutting flowers. You can cut, and not all cut flowers live very long in a vase or vase. Some will wilt right away. So when you see that symbol, it'll show you that it will last in a vase or vase or flower arrangement in a long time, as well as foliage can be used in those things also, as well as some branches can be brought in and made to start blooming earlier than they would in the cold. Christmas tree evergreen, skull and crossbones, poisonous to animals and most likely to humans and most likely to your pets also. And many of the poisonous or toxic plants are deer resistant. Although if the deer are really hungry, they're going to eat it anyway because it's not going to kill them. So if you see that symbol of the deer with the cross line going across, that means that it is deer resistant. Although different deer, different areas will eat certain plants that they won't in other areas. Portrait of a deer means that those deer are just going to love those plants. And then we have rabbit resistance. Okay, we have a lot of heat. Some plants cannot take the heat. Some plants cannot tolerate our New Jersey humidity. New Jersey humidity doesn't allow us to grow delphiniums or lupines very well because they don't like that humidity during the summer. So some plants really enjoy that very much. Drought tolerant is a very, it's misleading in a way, in that don't think that once you buy a plant that's considered drought tolerant or has a cactus on the tag, that you just plop it in the ground and it'll do fine. No, it will be drought tolerant once it's established. And what does that mean? That means that when you bring that plant home and when you plant it in your garden, you need to water it and make sure that it's watered adequately for at least a week or two, maybe 3, and then tug that plant. And if that plant doesn't move, that means it has sent out its root into your native soil and it considers itself to be home. But during dry spells, especially the first year, make sure that you water anyway. And as far as shrubs, some of them can take a year, even 2 years to get established. So don't stop watering shrubs if you plant shrubs when fall comes or when it starts getting really cold out. Keep watering. Doesn't have to be every week, but make sure that during the warm spells in winter that you go and give it some water so that when the ground freezes and then thaws, that shrub or tree will have water. Okay, tolerates wet feet. I know that very well because I have a high water table, and there are plants that, just like us, cannot take being in water for very long. They cannot take that oxygen. They will drown and they will rot. So there are many plants I have learned through trial and error that love wet feet or don't mind wet feet. Plants that cannot tolerate it will have this X, this symbol, because the Grim Reaper here, that plant will definitely die. When you see wet, that means that if you have a boggy area or a downspout where there's always water there after it rains and it hangs around for a while, that plant will just love it there. Easy care is self-explanatory. It's low to no maintenance. Rich and fertile, that means that you've amended the soil with compost or some sort of organic matter to enrich the soil, because some plants do require a nice fertile soil. A lot of you in Ocean County and many in Monmouth County and other counties have sandy soil, which is great, but sandy soil is a little hard because you need to water more frequently and other things that go with the sandy soil. And there are some plants that just love it. I have clay soil, so I look for plants that can tolerate clay soil. And clay soil is more difficult for plants because it's harder for them to push out the roots through that clay soil. But luckily, there are plenty of those plants that just love the clay. When I have soil tolerant, which most of these plants are, that means they don't care whether it's sandy or clay soil. It'll tolerate any type of soil. Doesn't mean that it will tolerate bad soil or poor soil. This is where you'll see whether it needs to have fertile soil or not. Some of you live in an area where it's very windy. Some of you live, so you look for this wind blowing cloud. And if you live by the coast or in a city where the snow is plowed onto one of your garden beds, you look for that symbol. Okay, now we can really start. Okay, here is this wonderful dwarf Alberta spruce, which was developed in Canada, hence it's good to zone 2. And this plant you see everywhere, in every garden center, Home Depot, excuse me, I'm not supposed to mention any name, big box stores, and even supermarkets around the holidays or whatever. And they're so adorable, and they're so cute. People decorate them, and then they buy a whole bunch. They're really wonderful because, as you can see, they're nice and a deep green. They have nice, thickly packed needles, nicely branched in a nice Christmas tree shape. They're really beautiful. They grow well in containers. These are mine in my containers. This is one of the items that I use to keep the deer from jumping into that area. They do very well. They are really no maintenance. However, if you plant them too closely together, what happens is the areas that don't get the sun, they brown out, which means that those branches are dead. And once those dead branches go brown, they will never be green again. So when you're looking at this, this will make a good hedge, but make sure that you plant them at least 8 feet apart, because if you take out any of these plants, you will see that not one of them is a healthy plant. Each one of them will have an area like that. And here, look what happened. You buy these plants, they're so cute, they're so tiny, and you plant them everywhere, and look, they can't see out their windows here. And I don't know what's behind over here by the door, but even the cat is wondering what happened here. It looks like 3 of them were planted pretty closely together. So unless you like to prune and do things like this, I suggest that you be careful how you space these plants, because as you can see, they grow to 10 to 12 feet high. Granted, they grow 2 to 4 inches per year, but you know, it's like little kids, like when you have a baby and then, oh my God, this kid's going to college. It's the same thing with these shrubs. They're tiny, they're cute, they're small, and then all of a sudden they're so huge. And trust me when I tell you, it's really hard to transplant one of these big guys. So next one, this is like a jewel. It's like a sapphire in your garden. This conifer is very well branched. It has a nice dome shape with these beautiful, thickly spaced silver blue needles. Really beautiful. And what's nice about it is that it's branched all the way from the top to the bottom. And it usually stays this shape for quite a long time. As you can see, it can grow up to 5 feet high. And as it gets older, it will be more of a pyramid shape. Believe it or not, here it says very long-lived shrub. This shrub can live 60 years. So plant it where you'd like to have it so you don't have to transplant it or move it. A really wonderful plant that doesn't mind what kind of soil it's in and doesn't mind if it's an average soil. Really a good plant, and as you can see, it can tolerate almost everything, except it does not like wet feet. Look at it in this landscape. These are mostly all conifers. Look how wonderful it looks. It's flat top for a while, and then it starts going into that pyramid shape. Here's another, deceitful little plant. You go to the garden center and you see these cute little pots of these plants and you say, ooh, they're so adorable. Let me get a whole bunch. And you plant them all around like this. Well, did you read the label? Well, this plant can be anywhere from 3 to 5 feet high, if not 10 feet high, really high. It grows 6 to 12 inches every year, which means that if you want to keep that shape and that size, you need to be pruning a lot. What's nice about this plant and why people buy it is because of the golden foliage that turns bronzy when it gets cold. Really, it's a beautiful shrub, but people don't realize that it does not remain tiny. Now here's, I saw this driving down the street once, and look at this. The landscaper is enamored with this plant and planted it all over. Now it's been like this for a number of years. Can you imagine how much fun he has pruning this? This is a picture that I took a few months ago of the plants there, and look what happens. It starts looking ratty and not so nice. This is what it looks like when it's full grown. So you have to keep that in mind. So because it gets that big, it makes a good hedge. But look, the way that they planted these, again, they thought they were tiny and didn't realize that they would be growing into each other. And again, brown areas where they touch each other. I saw this and I had to take a picture. Who do you think is going to win here? I don't think any of them are going to win because they're all going to have brown spots. The only ones, this one, whoops, this one and this one at the end, because you can kind of prune it. But all these, they're not going to be living there very happily for a long time. Now, if you want something that's small and if you have a small area, Anna's Magic Ball Arborvitae is the perfect plant for you. It has these fan-like branches that start out green and go golden, really beautiful. It takes a very long time for it to get big. It's anywhere from 12 to 24 inches, and this is after 10 years, it'll still be 24 inches and not taller. A really nice plant, needs no pruning. And as you can see, it does like fertile soil, so make sure that you put some compost around it or some sort of fertilizer in the spring. And it loves the heat. It's very drought tolerant. Once it's established, remember, it may take up 2 years for you to keep watering it when it needs it before you can just let it be. And then after that, you don't need to give it any care at all. Another one that's really cute and small for your yard, and another wonderful evergreen conifer is this fire chief, because it has this nice golden foliage that when it's cool, it turns this nice reddish color, and also the new growth that comes in is reddish, hence the name fire chief. And again, this one can take average to fertile soil and can take my clay very well. and also being wet from time to time. If you cannot, boxwoods are having a problem. This is a selection, a native selection from our Inkberry Holly, which is a native plant all along the eastern coast. This one is very well branched from the top to the bottom, doesn't get leggy like our native Inkberry Holly. It has these little white flowers, really a nice plant with these shiny leaves. It will have berries. This is a female, but it needs to have a male pollinizer in order to have those berries, because it is in the holly family, and hollies need a male and female in order to have berries. And yes, this is also evergreen. I'm giving you all the evergreens that I can muster up. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm just giving you a few. And once it's established, no maintenance is needed. If you need to prune, just know that it blooms on old wood, so prune it after it blooms, so you'll have those blooms. My favorite, I just love this plant. This Akuba is variegated. Variegated means that it has more than one color on its leaf or flower. I had this wonderful Variagata Akuba growing in my yard for years. It got to be at least 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide. Then one spring, I went down to where it was in an area where there's a lot of trees and it's quite shady, and this loves the shade. In fact, the leaves scorch if it has too much sun. Anyway, I went there, and what did I see? I saw a mohawk. The deer ate all the leaves all around and just left the top because they couldn't get to it. And year after year, they just nibbled it down to nothing. This also needs to have a male in order to have berries. But this plant is just so beautiful that it doesn't matter. And the pollinizers are Mr. Goldstrike and Gold King. What I love about this plant is that besides the fact that it's evergreen, it is very drought tolerant. This plant can be planted under trees. It's like an understory plant, but make sure that you water it until it's established, and then you don't have to give it a care. Really beautiful. And there are various varieties, all solid green, or as you can see, look how beautiful sulfur is, and picturata. Really wonderful. The only thing that they cannot handle is wet feet. And also the deer. Deer just love them. I'm so sorry I can't grow this anymore. This I have also. This I have, thankfully, because the deer don't eat it. This is false holly, goshiki. Goshiki means 5 colors, and the colors are cream, white, pink, orange, and green. And the new growth that comes in is this reddish pink. And the background of the leaves are green, and it looks like it's all splotched with cream or white. Really a beautiful plant, and as you can see, it's spiky like a holly, but it is not a holly. It has these very fragrant flowers in the fall. They're tiny, but they're mighty as far as their aroma. And they are, this is a picture off the internet. If you do plant this plant, plant it in front of something that's dark, either a dark evergreen or some sort of dark background, so that you'll be able to enjoy the beautiful variegation of this plant. And again, this can take a good amount of heat and drought, but it does not like to have wet feet. This is an evergreen also. Even though the leaves look like they're very fragile, they are not. The common name is heavenly bamboo, totally not related to bamboo at all. This one is firepower. The regular Nandina domestica does self-sow. It does tend to be invasive, whereas this one has no blooms. does not self-sow. It is gorgeous, and it doesn't care what kind of soil, but it does like it to be fertile. This is what it looks like in the winter. In the spring, the new leaves come out green, and then as the season progresses, it starts getting that nice reddish tinge. And look how wonderful it looks planted. And I'm showing you plants that can be, these shrubs that can be planted in your garden, even if you don't have a lot of space, because a lot of these are really small. And trust me, as I'm getting older, I'm finding shrubs are my friends, because they really don't need a lot of attention once they're established, and they look great, as long as you pick the ones that you don't have to prune. If you can only pick one plant for part shade, this is the best broadleaf evergreen shrub, because it has 4 seasons of color. This is what these are the blooms that are up to 6 inches long in the spring, and they come in various colors. They bloom for a nice long time, and as you can see, pollinators love them. And the pollinators need plants that they can go to for nectar or pollen in the early spring. But what's beautiful about this plant is that even with these blooms, also starting in the late summer to fall, the flower buds start to appear, either light like this or reddish like this on this Dorothy Wyckoff. And these buds hang around all winter long and then open up in the spring. Really beautiful. And the leaves are nice, elongated, and shiny and gorgeous. And they also come in various sizes. So different varieties, anywhere from 3 to 10 feet high as far as their mature height. Here are some of the different varieties and the colorful blooms. Some are variegated. Look at this white pearl, how interesting that looks. And again, I'm showing you plants that are just so easy care, no maintenance or hardly any maintenance. And the added bonus to some of these is their new growth comes out reddish on some of them. And if you're standing at a distance and you're looking at it, you think you're looking at poinsettias, because that's how gorgeous they are. So if you want to have that look at the label and see if it mentions, because anytime there's something extra special about a plant, you'll be sure that they will mention that on the plant tag. This is another one that I recommend always. When anybody asks me, what can I plant that deer don't like that will tolerate a good amount of shade? This is just like the Akuba. This can tolerate a good amount of shade, a good understory tree. And once it gets established, there's nothing that you need to do. If it gets a little too tall, you can kind of cut off the top branches to keep it more rounded shape if you want. What happens is in late winter, early spring, you have these buds of the flowers that open up during the winter. And then they form these beautiful grape-like berries, hence the name Grape Holly. A wonderful plant. As you can see, it has all these attributes and can be live by the shore, can be pruned. The only thing that it cannot take is wet feet, and the deer do not eat it. Because as you can see, these leaves here, they're leathery, they're thick, and they have a spike at the end of each leaf. Here it is in the winter. This is in my garden. And here you can see that the buds are starting to form, and it continues. A wonderful plant, very low maintenance. It does self-sow. I just saw that. So you will have volunteers here and there. Oh, I forgot. Now we're going to go into shrubs or trees that don't have any leaves in the winter. However, they do bloom in the winter. This is witch hazel. This is Arnold's Promise. It blooms in February and March with these strange outer space looking blooms with red centers and then these strapping petals that are really nice. They do have a fragrance, and it's a wonderful thing to look at in the wintertime, especially when there's snow in the background. Now, witch hazels, when it's warmer, they furl out and the blooms furl out. When it gets a little too cold, they sort of curl in to protect themselves. They have these strange looking seed capsules, but their foliage is really very pretty in the growing season. And then look how beautiful the foliage is in the fall. And this witch hazel, Arnold's Promise, happens to have a nice vase shape. It does tend to grow tall, 12 to 15 feet high, but it's really very beautiful, and it's really a no-fuss type of a plant, and it blooms for 6 to 8 weeks, which is really a nice long time. And again, a very long shrub, 40 years. I mean, come on. Now, if you're not into yellow and you would like to have another color, this one is a Yelena, and this was developed in Belgium, where I was born, and it's pronounced Yelena. And what's nice about this plant is that it is shorter. It grows 4 feet high after 10 years, so it doesn't outgrow its space. It'll take a lot longer for it to grow into 8 feet. Also has the same type of leaves, also wonderful fall foliage. And if you've ever gone to Highline, go in the wintertime if you can. I think now you have to make an appointment to go. But this is one of the witch hazels, one of the low maintenance plants that they plant there. If you're not into orange and you're into red, Diana's a bit taller, and according to what I've read, it's the best red witch hazel, and it also is the longest blooming witch hazel. And I forgot to mention that this Yelena and this one, they bloom earlier than the usual witch hazels. So these are nice plants if you can find them, and they're easy to find. Okay, evergreens, evergreen shrubs. Broadleaf hollies. I'm not going to go into hollies because, as you can see, there are over 780 evergreen hollies, 30 of them deciduous, which means that their leaves fall, and they're either trees or shrubs, and they're native all over the world. Berries can be red, black, orange, yellow, but they do need a male in order to have the berries. And you don't need a lot of males. They'll do fine. One male can do 5 or 10 of them. But you have to make sure that when you get the hollies, you get the male and the female, and they have to be blooming at the same time in order for the pollinizer to do his thing. If they're not blooming at the same time, you're not going to be having any berries. And the reason why I put all these deer here, deer don't care about these thorns, about these leaves. They'll eat it. They love it. Another plant that I recommend for a good shady area, and is also very drought tolerant. I love this plant to death, and thank goodness I still have it. I still have them. I have a bunch of them. This is Skinnia. And this is what it looks like in the winter. All these nice berries. This is a female. And again, it needs a male in order for the female to have the berries. During the winter, the berries start forming in the fall, well, late summer, fall, and also the buds of flowers start forming. And here is a close-up of a bud. This is what it opens up to in the spring. The male bud and bloom has to be bigger because he has a job to do. So this is a really nice plant. And the deer don't eat it, which is great. The only thing that it cannot take is wet feet. So when you're buying your Skinnia, these are mine. I didn't clean them up when I took the pictures. You make sure that you have a male and a female. Many times they sell them and they don't know what it is. So, but they're beautiful anyway, whether they have berries or not. This is in my yard. This one, with the Skinnias, the ones that have smaller leaves usually are shorter. The ones that have bigger leaves, like this one, usually grow up to be 5 feet tall. The other ones usually remain about 2 feet tall. So here is a male pollinizer. I don't know the name, never got it. And this is my female in August because the pollinizer did a great job. So this is how the berries start in August, even earlier, and then start turning red for the winter. This is in my yard. This is the same one. This is with snow on it. Look how beautiful it looks. Really gorgeous. It does like fertile soil. And what I've noticed, and this can take a good amount of shade, does not like the afternoon sun. Here, there's a picture. This is what it looks like if it has too much sun. Doesn't like it at all. Again, this is one of these plants that can be planted under trees. You have to make sure that they are well established, and then you just leave them alone. They cannot take wet feet, but what's wonderful is the deer don't eat them. This is a clone. It's a male. Look how beautiful it is. This is what it looks like all winter long with the buds that are red, hence the name rubella. And this is how it opens up in the spring. And this is what it looks like when all of them open up in the spring. Again, a wonderful plant and a great pollinizer for any of your Skinnias, females. Okay, here we go into Winterberry Holly, which is native to New Jersey as well as to the eastern coast and other areas. Again, in order to have berries, you need to have a male pollinizer for the female plants. And one male can service 5 to 10 females. You don't have to plant a lot of males. And what you can do, since the males do not really have the berries, but they do have the blooms, you can plant the male in the center and then just plant the female ones around it. And it can be as far away as 40 feet. It doesn't have to be really nearby if you want to always be looking at something great. This is what it looks like in the winter against the snow. Really wonderful. The berries, the birds love, the deer love, really gorgeous. So here is a list, and it should be in your handout, of the different females and the different males. As you can see, they bloom at different times. Some are early, some are mid-season, some are late blooming. So you have to make sure that the male and female are blooming at the same time. So here we're looking at Jim Dandy. So who do you think is the lucky female who's just right for our Jim Dandy? Red Sprite, right here. And usually, hopefully, in the label, they will tell you that it's a good male pollinator or pollinizer for Red Sprite. So here we have it, and we have the berries, and they lived happily ever after. Here is Berry Poppins, which is a short one. As you saw, they grow up to be kind of tall, 6, 8, 10 feet tall. This one is a short one, really great. Here are the flowers, and here you could see that the berries are here. So there has to be some pollinizer nearby to do what he needs to do. And who do you think that is? Oh, it's Mr. Poppins, his magic. And what's nice is Mr. Poppins is also an ideal pollinizer for Berry Heavy and Berry Nice. Isn't that cute? So if you don't have a lot of space and want to have these wonderful Winterberry hollies, in your garden for the birds. Also, you can bring them in, use them for your holiday decorations. You need to make sure that you have the males in order to pollinate. You don't like red? There are gold ones or peachy colored ones. This one is winter gold. It's a female. And the Southern Gentleman, don't you just love that name, is the pollinizer for this wonderful Winterberry Holly. Now we're going into shrubs with colorful stems. All their leaves have fallen off, but as you can see, the fall foliage of this yellow twig dogwood is really pretty. It's yellow, and the leaves, the stems are beautiful. This is a close-up, pollinator-friendly. In order to have these wonderful, colorful branches or stems, you need to cut out the older stems, which turn gray and will not have this beautiful yellow color. But this is what it looks like during the growing season. It has these beautiful variegated leaves. These are the buds, the flowers, and it has white berries that the birds just love. And again, this is pretty tolerant of any kind of soil, including my clay soil, but it does like fertile soil and it can take some shade. Here is a wonderful Arctic fire, which is a shorter one also. This has nice red foliage, red stems and white berries, and the foliage also turns a wonderful coloring in the fall. And this I found during the winter before the pandemic thing started at a ShopRite. And to show you how easy it is to grow, they've planted all of these in all these little beds. And do you think there's anybody out there taking care of them? Of course not. So this is a wonderful plant for your garden that is low maintenance, if not no maintenance, except for taking off those older ones. And when you do take off the older ones, make sure that you don't take off more than 25% of the stems to make sure that it remains healthy. Or what you can do is every 3 years or whatever, just cut the whole thing down to 6 inches and you'll get new stems. Also, when you first plant it, don't cut it back at all for the first 2 or 3 years until it gets really established. Look at this midwinter fire. Wouldn't you love to have this in your garden? And this is what the foliage starts looking like in the fall. And it has these wonderful black berries that the birds love. And look how this looks. Isn't this gorgeous? Really beautiful. Here's a close-up. And here is a mix of all the different dogwoods, yellow dogwood, blood twig, all of them. Look how gorgeous that looks in the winter. Now we go with a more subtle green stem. This is Caria. I love Caria. I used to grow Caria. It has these wonderful green stems for the winter. This is the regular Caria Japonica. And it has these butterscotch yellow flowers, really beautiful. And it has these wonderful stems for the winter. But this is what I love. This is Plentiflora. This is what I had. Look how gorgeous. This was in my yard. And this was what I saw every spring. And what's wonderful about Caria, it really blooms heavily from April to May, and then sporadically throughout the growing season, you'll find blooms here and there. And this is a double. Double means that it has more than one layer of petals. Looks like little roses, really gorgeous. Unfortunately, since the deer arrived, because I didn't used to have deer, but since the deer arrived, they annihilated this plant, so I no longer have it. Miss it. And here it is, along with other wonderful, colorful twigs. Beautiful.
Irene?
Jesus, I'm sorry, I started easily.
This is 10 minutes.
Okay.
All right, just letting you know.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, look at me. This is a Harry Lauder walking stick. It's a contorted hazelnut. It is beautiful. Its twisted branches look gorgeous. This is what it looks like in the winter. You can see a little bit of snow. In the spring, it has these nice long yellow catkins, which happen to be the male ones. The female ones are hardly noticeable. Beautiful foliage. Nice green and then yellow in the fall. But look how nicely it looks when it's in the winter after the snow has fallen. Really beautiful. And people use this plant for flower arrangements. And if you want red, there's a red dragon, and it has the reddish catkins. It's not as twisty and contorted as the other one, but still the red remains the whole season long. Really a wonderful plant. Okay, here we have trees with beautiful bark. I'm not going to go into them because they are on your handout, but some people plant trees just for those wonderful barks during the winter. Did you know that there are evergreen perennials? Yes. This one is a Burgunia. Burgunia is named after a guy named Bergen, hence the name instead of Virginia. And this is what the leaves look like in the winter. That's why it's called winter glow or winter glut, which is German. Beautiful reddish and beautiful foliage. The leaves are cabbage thick. And when you rub the leaves, they sort of make a noise. And one of the names for this plant is pig squeak, because that's what it sounds like, a little piggy squeaky. Okay, and in the spring, you have these wonderful blooms. Meanwhile, there are a lot of Burgunias. This is just one of them, but this one has these wonderful colorings. During the growing season, the leaves are green, but they have a purpley underside. They have these beautiful blooms in the spring, and sometimes it may bloom again in the fall. Really a wonderful plant and can take drought very well as some water. Who doesn't love hens and chicks? This is the one plant that you can plant where there's hardly any soil, if any. Really wonderful. Does not need to be established. The only thing that it demands two things: sunlight, lots of sunlight, and very good drainage. If it doesn't have drainage, it's just going to rot. It's a wonderful plant. I love it very much. Comes anywhere from a dime size to a grapefruit size. Comes in all kinds of colors, variegated. It's called hens and chicks because the mother has these little chicks that grow around her. And during the summer, the mother blooms, and this is a close-up of the bloom, and it dies, and then the little chicks take over and they become the mother next year, and it goes on and on and on. And this is on my patio table in the wintertime. Here is some snow. Look how beautiful that looks. And here are some more snow pictures. Wonderful. And you can plant them anywhere. And they're wonderful in a wall, but as long as you need to drill drainage holes. Very, very important. Look at this. Another name for this plant is house sleep, because in Europe, they would put them on their roofs to keep the temperature in the house cooler in the winter, and also it'll absorb some of the rain that falls. Really a wonderful plant. I recommend it highly. But again, sun and drainage. We have an evergreen sedum. I love this one. This one is called blue spruce because there's a close-up. And doesn't it remind you of that beautiful blue spruce I showed you before? It has these blooms 10 inches high, star-shaped blooms. And in the wintertime, the edges of the plant start to have this nice purpley or plum-colored coloring. Really beautiful. This is a deep cut that I took. This is a wall. It's growing in a wall, and this was taken last November. Another one that I love is evergreen is Angelina. What a wonderful little ground cover it is. Look how it spreads nicely. And it does keep the weeds down. The flowers are also star-like and really nice. And also, when it starts getting cooler, it has a reddish tip. And this was taken at one of my friend's house during the winter months. I don't remember which one, but look how gorgeous that is. And again, drainage, drainage, drainage. Very important. If you have slugs, if you have deer, if you have wet, dry, whatever, this plant is the plant to plant, because you cannot plant hostas because the deer don't eat this. This Rhodea has been growing at the Rutgers Gardens for over 25 years. I just discovered it about 5 years ago. And it stays evergreen. You can see all the snow around it in the spring. It has these the flowers. This is the blooms. Looks like a little pineapple. And then it has these berries. This plant comes from Japan. When it first came out, each plant will cost $1,000. This is a good luck plant. This plant in Japan, when anybody buys a new house, has a new business, or celebrate anything, this is the plant that they give. And this plant can take so much shade that it can live indoors, even in a closet. So if you need a plant that's there all the time, this is the plant, and the deer don't eat it. Hellebores, wonderful. This is fetidus because it says it's stinky, but it's not. It has nice leathery leaflets, like in a fan shape. The blooms the buds start in December and continue, and then they start blooming in February. Some of them have a little reddish tinge to it, and they hang around for quite a long time and is evergreen. Look how it looks in the wintertime. Here are the hellebores, here's a Burgunia, and here is the red twig dogwood. Hellebores, another hellebores. This is orientalis. It was voted as 2005 Perennial of the Year. Comes in so many different colors, really beautiful. Look how beautiful the leaves are. They're nice and leathery, a little bit of serrated edge. They are wonderful to grow under trees that are deciduous, that lose their leaves. They can take a good amount of shade. They're very, very drought tolerant. Why? Because they send a deep tap root to make sure that they have moisture. They do not like to be moved. You see here? Do not like to be transplanted, because if you don't get the whole tap root, it's not going to look good. Also, it blooms for a long time. And this is what it looks like after the bloom is sort of finished, and it's going to seed, but it still looks like it's a bloom. Here is what it looks like in a winter setting. Caryxes, God, I love caryxes. There are so many of them, thousands and thousands, over 500 here in the United States. Some are clumpers. This is a clumper. This is evergreen. It's got this hairy type of leaf. This is in my garden in March. So this is how it looked during the winter. This is from the internet. Look how nice it looks with the snow on there. This one is also a wonderful calyx. They can take wet, they can take dry, they can take
Hi guys, I don't know if everybody can hear me. I know it looks like Irene on my end. I don't know. Yeah, Marjorie lost sound, so give us a minute. Okay, Laura, you can hear me. I'm hoping Irene comes back on. She was getting there.
I know. But someone was saying that they were having trouble seeing some of the pictures. I wonder if that's why. Maybe her internet is just a little
going down. Yeah. So okay. So I am going to well, we'll see. We're getting close to well, we're technically at time, but that I'll have to tell Irene that wasn't on purpose. But I just wanted to let everybody know that I will I have to turn her PowerPoint into a PDF, so I will do that in the morning, and I will send it out to everybody that attended so that you would get the end of the presentation with the photographs. Irene has such wonderful slides, and she does so much research on them. It's definitely a treat to watch. I also have her handout for those. I heard my email beeping, so I know I have a few emails that are probably in my box waiting for the handout for those that did not get it yet. Yeah, if Irene gets, she probably has to get, she doesn't know to get back on, and she probably doesn't realize that she's off technically.
Probably not. We only have about 10 more slides to do.
Okay, so we'll see if
So
we
it's-
can get her we could get her back on. But in any case, anybody, if you have questions, put them in the chat box at this point. We can do that in case she pops back on, and let her finish out. Otherwise, we will finish and we can answer any questions through email if you have other things. Daniel, you're very welcome. I'm glad you're joining us from Union County. That's awesome. I'm just so happy that this our program has been very well received all the way through New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We had Oregon in one treat. So somebody asked about lace bugs on Paeris. You can treat those in the spring. You want to start looking around Mother's Day. And then sometimes you'll get a second generation in September. Most of your soap, your insecticidal soaps will work. Horticultural oils, neem oil should work, but you definitely want to look on the label for that. For lace bugs to be listed, and then you would spray during those times. Forget how long you spray. I think it's only 2 sprays, and then they're kind of past the point of when they do the damage, and then the next round can come out. So that's a possibility. I don't know if you see any other, Patty, any other questions?
Just about some handouts. So I'll get the handout to Ted tomorrow. Somebody asking about some plants for wet feet and deer resistant, but if he can send me his email address, just type it in the chat box there or the Q&A, and we can send out some lists tomorrow.
Yep, and we have the deer resistant list as well that's around. So.
Yep,
okay.
There's a bunch of email addresses in the chat box.
Okay. I'll save all of those
okay.
so that I'll get all the emails from there. And I just really want to thank again everybody for hanging in there with us. And we will definitely have Irene finish out if I can get her to record the last 10 minutes of her slide. We'll try that as well. But I also really want to just thank everybody for being as supportive and letting us know, what things for us to go forward, because we are planning on doing this again in January and doing our In the Know to Grow series so that we can help you grow and keep your life as sane as possible, because I think peace is only found in the garden these days, at least for me. So I want to thank you all again. And there will be a survey that'll pop up when I turn off the recording. And so you can just let us know. And I'm just giving a couple more minutes because I see a bunch of people. Yeah, Laura, you agree? I do see a couple people popping in their email addresses. I probably will just wind up sending the PowerPoint and the handout again to everybody, so you don't have to stress too much about getting those the PowerPoint or the handouts. So, but I really, again, thank you everybody. Patty, I don't know if you have any other words of wisdom to share.
I actually see a question. Someone's plagued by powdery mildew. So, yeah, aren't we all?
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what's plagued by powdery mildew. I grow some plants at my house that are definitely prone to powdery mildew. I use copper fungicide before I have a problem. So I do that a couple times in the spring and early summer, and it kind of takes care of it later in the summer. It might get a dot or two, and then I don't really worry about it. But, it's something that's not pretty to look at, but it doesn't really compromise the flowering or the integrity of the plant. It usually can power through the powdery mildew. It's just unsightly.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. And then there's also, there was another question too about Lenten rows, when you can plant them. It's getting you can plant up until the ground freezes solid, but you tend to, with perennials, if we get a lot of freezing and thawing, they could heave out of the ground. So it's a little dicey with those. Once they're established, they're great. It's just getting them established that first year. So I would suggest, if you can find them, to wait until the spring. They'll be done blooming for you then. But you may be able to find some leftovers for the season, and the garden centers now, which would, again, they've been potted. Their root system is somewhat self-contained, so you may be okay. But you do want to be careful. Give them an extra little pine needle mulch or something to help with that. Is what we can do. And somebody just asked if we can put the PowerPoint online, and we have certain rules that we're allowed to do. Because the PowerPoint has so many photographs, we cannot put that on because it's not handicap accessible for those people that may need other things. So that's why we can send it out to you guys directly, but we can't have it just posted online. The recording, yes, but not the actual handout. So I want to thank everybody. I'm going to stop here. Patty, if you could call Irene after. I don't have her number with me. I thought I did. And I really just want to say thank you so much. Nancy, thank you for joining us. She's been on quite a few of our talks as well. We will have Irene back for other talks because she just is amazing. Her plant lists are amazing. So again, in the survey, when it pops up here, please let us know what you're interested in, and we will do our best to figs. I know we've been hearing a lot of questions about figs, so that's one we're working on. Bulbs for spring planting and fall planting, so we're working on those as well. So I want to thank everybody again. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and as soon as I end as soon as I stop talking, the survey will pop up. But thank you all so much, and Andrea, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy your evening, everybody. It's stopping somewhere in here.